Hi, in this sixth article, we will learn about constructor functions. Constructor functions, a concept in JavaScript, help you to create reusable objects and implement inheritance. Irrespective of your knowledge level, I believe this video will be of great help to you. And by the end of this session, you will learn about the following. What a user-defined objects are in JavaScript, what a constructor function is, and how can we write this function and its usage. The importance of new keyword while calling this function, the usage of new.target keyword, behavior of a constructor function when it has return statement, purpose of prototype and proto property, the concept of prototype chain, constructor prototype pattern, constructor property, and how classes make use of constructor prototype pattern. Before I start, I would like to introduce myself briefly. My name is Sunil Kathuria and I have been in IT industry for over 20 years. I have developed skills in languages such as C++, Python and JavaScript, and yes, English and Hindi for efficient delivery. Software engineering skills like OOP, DSA, solid principles and design patterns. I've also worked on web development frameworks like Flask and Django. I'm passionate about distributed systems and I'm eager to share my knowledge and help others start their learning journey in this exciting fields. Since 2020, I'm a technical trainer by profession and I try to make technical trainings engaging, enjoyable and accessible. We start with the first topic, knowing the objects. If you are new to JavaScript functions, I suggest you watch the playlist to better understand this topic. The link is in the description below. We have seen a few samples of objects in our earlier videos. And in this code snippet, I define an object in the name of Sunil with two attributes, name and age, and one method, showDetails. To execute the method, I write the statement sunil.showDetails. Now we can access any attribute or method of an object using the dot notation. Now I can write more code and create another object if needed. However, to create an object this way, I should know the objects I need beforehand. And this is not a practical way of creating objects when the number of required objects is not known in advance. So I need a mechanism to create an object on the fly. And to make this happen, JavaScript provides a constructor function. A constructor function is just like a normal function. Its name should start with an uppercase, and this is done to create a distinction between a regular and a constructor function. In this code snippet, I create a constructor function instead of an object. And this function, just like the earlier object, has two attributes, name and age, and one method, showDetails. Using this constructor function, I can now create one or more objects of type person. And to create a new object, we have to use the new operator while calling the constructor function. In this code snippet, I create a new object in the name of Amit and call the showDetails functions using the dot notation. When I create a new object, JavaScript performs the following activities. It creates a new empty object and assigns it to this variable. Add the properties to this variable. In our example, it is name and age. Adds a method to this variable. In our example, it is showDetails. And finally, the function returns this variable, which is an implicit statement. Here is another code snippet, and I'm trying to create another person object without using the new keyword. So how does JavaScript behave in this situation? The constructor function executes just like any other normal function. Instead of creating a blank object, this variable refers to the global object, and the attributes will be added to this global object. The function will not return this variable implicitly. Hence, the variable Gaurav is set to undefined, and any reference to an attribute will lead to an error. So how can I ensure that the constructor function is called with a new operator? For this, Java provides a property called new.target. Now this allows you to check whether a constructor function was called with a new operator or not. This property is available in all the functions except the arrow function. However, an arrow function lexically binds this value. If you wish to learn more about lexical binding, I suggest you to go through the playlist to learn more about it. Coming back, in a regular function, JavaScript sets the new.target value to undefined. And a function call with the new operator sets the value of new.target property to the function reference. In this code snippet, I write a function called check new target value with an if condition checking for the value of new.target. So when I execute the function using the new keyword, the console.log statement prints an empty object. But in the second statement, when I execute the function without the new keyword, the console.log statement prints the value undefined. So far we have seen that a constructor function has no return statement and it implicitly returns a newly created object. But what if we have a return statement in the constructor function? Well, in that case, JavaScript has very clearly defined rules. If the return statement returns any value, JavaScript ignores it and returns the newly created object. And if the return statement returns an object, in this case, JavaScript returns the object mentioned in the return statement and ignores this object or the newly created object. In this code snippet, I create a user-defined object with 2 attributes and 1 method. And I will return this object from a constructor function. Now I write a constructor function, and in this constructor function, after initializing the new object, I add a return statement. And this return statement returns the object I created before. A subsequent call to show details function displays the content of the object we created before and not the object we created just now. In this second example, I create another constructor function, and this time the constructor function returns a value. You'll notice this return statement has no impact and the function returns a newly created object. Before we proceed to the next section and explore the concept of constructor function further, let's summarize what we have learned so far. Now we are going to discuss objects with methods. So far things look very nice. I have a constructor function which neatly packs properties and related methods, giving the feeling of a modular code. So when I create a new object from a constructor function, it contains the attributes and a copy of methods. So if I have 10 objects, each one will have its own set of attributes and methods. I understand that each object needs its set of attributes to maintain the state of the object. However, the same set of methods in each object does not sound so practical. So we observe modularity at the coding level but not at the implementation level. If you observe the code snippet, the constructor function object has both the attributes and a copy of the methods, and it is 139 bytes in size. In the second code snippet, I have written a similar constructor function without any method, and its object has attributes and it is 25 bytes in size. By the way, I have used third-party module object sizeof to calculate the size of an object. To address the concern of maintaining one single copy of methods for all the objects of a constructor function, JavaScript provides a property called prototype. A constructor function uses this property to share common methods and properties with all its instances. And every JavaScript constructor function has a prototype property, which is an object, an anonymous object. And on this object, we add methods and properties to share among the constructor function instances. In this code snippet, I create a new constructor function called player, and this has three attributes: the name, sport, and rank. Now, as we know, each constructor function has a prototype property that points to an anonymous object. We will add the show method to this object. And when I create an object, I can use the show method. But how does an object know that it can use the show method? For this, JavaScript provides one more property which we call proto. When I create a new object from a constructor function, JavaScript provides an internal property called proto to the object. Now this property gets the value from constructor.prototype at the time of object creation. And this forms a linkage between the object and its constructor function. So as per our previous example, the object Usha M gets a reference to player.prototype, and hence I was able to call the function show. Now this property points to an object from which it inherits, and JavaScript provides proto property to all the functions. So in a situation where a constructor function returns an object, in that case, the proto property links to the constructor function of the returned object. So when we access any property or method of an object, JavaScript looks for it in current object. If it is not found, it follows the linkage and searches the property in the linked object. And it continues with this search until it finds the property or reaches the property chain's end. But where does this chain end? To answer this question, we go back to the constructor function. So when we create a constructor function, JavaScript provides a proto property to this function as well, which points to function.prototype. Again, this also has a proto property which points to object.prototype, which is the final link in the prototype chain. So in our example, this is how the hierarchy looks like. Object Usha M's proto points to player.prototype, and the player's proto points to function.prototype, and this provides functions like call, bind, and apply. And the functions proto points to object, which provides functions like toString and value of. And object is the last point in the prototype chain. Now we will talk about constructor prototype pattern. Using this pattern, we define an object's properties in the constructor function and all the associated methods under the prototype property. So this way, when we create a new object, it contains the properties and all the objects share a common set of methods. We have already seen an example of this few minutes back, where we have created a constructor function player with all the attributes defined within it and using its prototype property to define the methods. Now we will learn about one more property called constructor property. For every constructor function, JavaScript provides this constructor property. This property references a function that we use to create an instance of an object. It is a part of the prototype property. The constructor property's main purpose is to identify object's original constructor. Let's have a look at the prototype chain again along with the constructor property. So in our example, player.prototype constructor refers to the constructor function player itself. And if we look at the prototype chain, the function.prototype constructor refers to function and the object.prototype constructor refers to the object function. We cannot conclude this video without discussing about classes. Now, since the introduction of the class keyword, it has become very easy to use the constructor prototype pattern. So with the given code snippet, the property name of the class myPlayer becomes part of the constructor function, and all the methods, in this case the show method, becomes part of the class prototype. And all this thing is done by JavaScript internally. By the way, the static methods and instance methods are never part of the prototype.
Static methods are defined at the class level and instance methods are the specific to an instance. Well, although there is a lot more to learn about classes in JavaScript, for this session, the discussion here is just to emphasize how a class keyword uses a constructor prototype pattern internally. With this, I wrap up the video and let's summarize what we have learned in this video. Thank you for watching this video. If this video has helped you, please like it. If you think this can help any of your friends, do share it. And finally, do subscribe so that you don't miss any other videos in future. Thank you very much. Keep learning.